Imagine being bedridden in a hospital, barely able to move, surrounded by nurses and doctors who check on you constantly, and then, within moments, without a single alarm, camera, or witness, you're gone. Days later, your body is discovered hidden in the ceiling, wedged in a place so impossible that no one can explain it. Now imagine it happening twice to two different men in two different hospitals. This is the terrifying story of the bizarre disappearances of Sandile Sibiya and Teteteka Gqotsi. And it's a story that's never been solved. Our story begins in December 2018 at RK Khan Hospital in Durban, South Africa. Sandile Sibiya, a 28-year-old man with a promising future, was admitted to the hospital following a severe leg injury. Damage was extensive, but his condition wasn't life-threatening. He was scheduled for surgery to repair the leg, which doctors said would require a lengthy recovery. So after the operation, Sandile was bed-bound, barely able to move on his own. Nurses monitored him around the clock, knowing his mobility was severely restricted. It was just an ordinary evening on the surgical ward. Nurses were making their usual rounds, checking on the patients one by one. At around 11 p.m., they stopped by Sandile's room, making a note that he was resting peacefully in his bed. But when they returned just an hour later, Sandile was gone. His bed was empty. Panic set in almost immediately. The nurses frantically searched every nook and cranny, thinking maybe he had somehow fallen out of bed and was in need of help. But there was no trace of him. How could this man, with a cast on his leg, simply disappear? The hospital's security team combed through hours of surveillance footage, hoping for a clue. Any sign of how he could have left his room, but the footage showed nothing. No one had entered or exited his room, except for the staff on duty. It was as if Sandile had been spirited away by some invisible force. Fear and confusion spread like wildfire throughout the hospital. How could a man with a broken leg simply get up and walk out without a trace? It wasn't until 2 days later that the search came to a grisly and disturbing end. A maintenance worker performing routine checks on a malfunctioning bathroom ceiling panel noticed something strange, a dark, sticky substance dripping down onto the floor. With growing dread, he pushed the ceiling tile aside and came face to face with the horror above. Sandile's lifeless body was wedged tightly between the pipes and beams, his casted leg twisted, awkwardly. He was in a position that seemed almost physically impossible to reach, especially for a man who couldn't walk. This discovery raised more questions than it answered. The autopsy revealed that Sandile had died of asphyxiation. There were no signs of struggle, no indication that he had tried to escape or call for help. How did he get there? Why was his body hidden in such an improbable location? And most importantly, who or what put him there? The hospital tried to keep the details under wraps, but rumors quickly spread, and the local media had a field day. A murder? A botched kidnapping? Some even whispered about malevolent spirits haunting the hospital. Theories abounded, but the case would go cold, shrouded in mystery. Until it happened, again. Just a few months later, in 2019, nearly 1,000 kilometers away in Stellenbosch Hospital, another strange incident sent shockwaves through the medical community. Teteteka Gqotsi, a 57-year-old man, suffering from severe heart problems, was admitted to the hospital's intensive care unit. Like Sandile, Teteteka was bedridden, unable to move without assistance. Hospital nurse said she entered Teteteka's room to change his sheets. She greeted him, exchanged a few words, and stepped into the hallway to retrieve clean linens from the cart, stationed right outside his door. When she returned moments later, Teteteka was gone. She froze, her mind racing. He couldn't have just walked out not without her noticing. She reported that, "I was only gone for seconds, but somehow he was just vanished." Just like with Sandile, there was no sign of him. 3 agonizing days later, the hospital was overcome by a foul odor. Maintenance workers traced the stench to the ceiling above the radiology department, several floors away from Teteteka's room. When they opened the ceiling panel, they were met with a sight that sent chills down their spines. Teteteka's lifeless body was wedged between two pipes, his face frozen in a look of terror. Investigators were baffled. How had a bedridden man ended up in the ceiling of a completely different part of the hospital without triggering any alarms or being seen by any cameras? Detectives and forensic teams scoured the hospital for clues. Some suspected it was the work of a deranged serial killer with knowledge of the hospital's layout. Others thought it might be an inside job, possibly a cult or group targeting vulnerable patients. But there was no evidence to support these theories. Both Sandile and Teteteka had been alive and seemingly fine just moments before they disappeared. And both were discovered in positions no human being should be able to reach. Psychologists suggested that whoever was responsible had to be not only physically strong, but also exceptionally cunning, able to move undetected in high-traffic areas. As whispers of hauntings and curses spread, the hospitals beefed up their security, installed additional cameras, and implemented stricter protocols. But the mystery remained.